Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Levine Hemlani. I am the founder and CEO of Accelerate. We are a leading edtech company that's focused on empowering young people just like yourselves to be ready for the future. Before I begin, I'd like to thank the CUHK Careers Office and Jessica. I know you're listening in. Thank you again for making this happen. It's an absolute delight to be working with you. And given the whole situation, we weren't able to do this talk in person, which was scheduled for this afternoon, but I'm glad that we have a decent number of students who are still willing to watch this through any other channel. So I know some of you will be on trains. I know some of you will be from your home. I know some of you may be in a library, and some of you may be in different parts of Hong Kong. But it's my absolute delight to be running this presentation for you today and hopefully inspire you to think about your careers as the world of artificial intelligence and robotics kind of takes over. So, format for today is I'll be as engaging and as exciting as I can be for the next 30 minutes, walk you through some of the thoughts that we have as a firm on how young people like yourself should think about the future of artificial intelligence, how they should think about careers in artificial intelligence, how they should think about the skills gaps, and where they should place themselves when it comes to careers of the future. And then I would like to open it up to 15 to 20 minutes worth of questions and answers. I'll be able to see during the stream all of your questions on my live chat. I have another separate station so I can see all those questions. So I will be able to answer all of those through the next 20 minutes. And as soon as those chats are done or questions are done, we'll wrap up with a few concluding thoughts. And I aim for us to wrap up by around 4. Does that sound good for everyone? Before I begin, just let me know if there's any technical difficulties at all. I've been doing a few tests for the last 20 minutes, so I think we should be good. If anyone can't hear me, or if at any point you get interrupted from this stream, don't worry. We will be recording this and we'll be hosting this as well on a YouTube channel. So this will be available after. And like I said before, if any of you want to get additional details from us or myself, I'd be happy to provide our details after this broadcast is over. Great. So before I begin, just want to tell you a little bit about myself. I am from Hong Kong, just like all of you. I was born and raised here, and I felt that there was a major sort of discrepancy between the Hong Kong education system and how it prepares people like ourselves, young people, for the future, which is why I started the company Accelerate. In the past 3 years since I started the firm, we've built an incredible team. We've trained thousands of people, almost 4,000 people. We've trained universities, we've trained governments, we've trained banks, hedge funds, insurance firms, asset managers. We've trained young people. We've helped everyone just be ready for the future. And this is a really exciting thing for us because the more we can train young people like yourselves to be thinking about global problems and to acquire superpowers, basically tools like artificial intelligence, then we can build a really brilliant future for us all. So let's get started. As many of you know, AI is very prevalent. I don't need to go too much into this slide, but we are seeing artificial intelligence creep up into every facet of our lives, into commercial technologies like self-driving cars, into consumer technologies like face recognition, into medical breakthroughs like cancer research and lung cancer, and of course all across financial systems and institutions like robo-trading. What we're seeing is the largest revolution that the world has seen in the last 100 years. We've seen that from the first industrial revolution to the second and the third industrial revolution, that there are massive labor market shifts. We see people whose entire lives are shifted, governments who have to rethink economies, who have to rethink what is human capital. And this fourth industrial revolution, which is happening right now, is happening at a breakneck light speed compared to the last few industrial revolutions. And for a lot of people, This is a very exciting era. This is an exciting industry. This is the era of big data. This is the era of IoT and cloud. And artificial intelligence is going to create a lot of value for entire ecosystems. But it also means a lot of us, young people, have to think very differently than what we've been trained to think in the last 5, 10, 15 years. So why is AI so relevant? Let's just jump into the factors that define why this has become such a hot technology. It's really the convergence of 4 major factors. The first is we are seeing very large growth in the amount of data out there. We've seen more and more data created in the last 2 years from cell phones, from computers, from everything you see around you, from IoT devices. And so the more data we create, the more of an engine, a positive feedback cycle we can create for artificial intelligence to train its algorithms, which is also another very, very strong driver of this technology. When we see more and more people who are able to create new algorithms with more data, as well as have access to new, very powerful computer chips, such as NVIDIA graphic chips, we're able to see more and more AI algorithms proliferate throughout the world. And for a lot of us, we are just seeing the beginning of a new technology. While artificial intelligence was around for the last 50, 60 years, and fields like machine learning and algorithms came out in the 90s and 2000s where AI was beating chess, what's very different in the technologies that you see today is a brand new arm of artificial intelligence called deep learning. And deep learning is incredibly exciting because it allows us to mimic the neural networks, the structures that are in our brains, to be able to create brand new advances in areas like computer vision and natural language processing. And those technologies allow companies across every single industry, whether you're in robotics, whether you're in healthcare, whether you're in fintech, whether you're in automotive, to think about new ways of adding value to our customers, adding value to the economy, and of course, adding value to our people. So for a lot of you that are entering an AI world, you have to think in the future how companies that will be hiring people just like you are thinking about artificial intelligence. And it just so happens that at the heart of all roles, it doesn't matter if you're going into accounting, doesn't matter if you're going into asset management, does not matter if you're going into sales, marketing, finance, data is going to be a very integral part of all of your careers. Does not matter, like I mentioned, which industry you're going into. And so this is a pretty exciting thing because if we see that all companies, especially the traditional companies, are moving from data resistant, aka companies today, traditional companies that don't even think about data, into directions that are data driven, like the Googles, the Facebook, the LinkedIns, it means the sort of people they want to hire are very, very different. It means they want people, young people just like you, to not pass exams and to not just come in and regurgitate what they've learned in school, but to think critically about all the data and to piece together stories that allow us as companies to build competitive advantage. And this is a very exciting transition because for those companies that can go data-driven, it means the future of work is also a very interesting facet of our society. Careers will be way more exciting than just monotonous work streams. And those monotonous work streams are going to be automated. So we live in a world where machines are going to take over a lot of the boring pieces of work, allowing us as young people, as creative problem solvers, to think about how we can use data intelligently so that organizations that we work with, or organizations for those of you that plan to be entrepreneurs, will use data intelligently. And for those that don't, we will see a lot of companies fall behind because this change is happening faster and faster. It's accelerating and accelerating. So we have to hold onto our seatbelts and we have to move as fast as we can. So again, to think about how you as young people who are about to graduate can get the most value from artificial intelligence. We have to see how AI creates value for society from a company standpoint. We see that if companies can drive cost reductions or drive labor productivity or use data science to help their customers get new insights or find new ways to profit and build revenue streams, then those people who get into these companies who can help those companies realize those values are going to be the rock stars of tomorrow. In other words, for those of you who are graduating or thinking about the careers of tomorrow, you have to think about what sort of skills the companies that you will be applying for and working for, they value. And in order to think about the sort of skills that they value, you have to think about how they're thinking about the technology that creates value and why drivers like this, whether it's smarter R&D or optimizing sales and marketing, will provide a better customer experience. And so the reason why we're doing this presentation in the first place, and the reason why I'm so excited to talk to all of you this afternoon, is that we're facing this major change. What is going to happen with the future of work is that millions of jobs will be automated, at least to some degree, due to automation. Now, it's really difficult because a lot of university systems and a lot of education systems have not been able to metamorphosize or evolve from traditional ways of teaching and thinking. They're basically obsolete. And while you have millions of jobs that are becoming automated, you're going to have many companies, the top companies in the world, that are not going to be able to find people that have those skills. And so if you take a step back, what we are seeing for a lot of young people is that there is a global tech talent skills gap. That means there's large untapped pools of talent that do not have the skills of the future. That means that when they are thinking about learning through online courses or learning through different ways that can prepare themselves, that they may not be having access to the best ways of thinking. So this is a shortage of talent on this side. But on the other side, we're seeing more and more companies that want talent, want young people just like you to solve their challenges, to help them equip their workforces and equip their customers with these new advances of technology. In other words, if you want to be useful and valuable for the world, you have to be ready to help these companies to undo that bottleneck of innovation. And essentially, when we have more and more people like yourselves that have skills in data science, in artificial intelligence, in the future of work, then these companies, doesn't matter if you're a traditional hospitality firm, doesn't matter if you're a traditional hospital, will be able to accelerate their transformation. And that is what's going to happen in the next 5 years. So all these industries that are going through rapid transformations at the executive level, they're thinking about it. But the people that are going to drive it are going to be young people just like you. You are the future leaders of tomorrow if you can help these companies, or if you're going to build your own companies, to be able to accelerate the transformation. Yes, Lau Kai's thing, I saw your question. This video will be recorded for later as well. So in terms of practical career advice, what could I tell you? In the 3 years that I've been running this company and the thousands of people that we've seen be ready for the future, we've seen that technical literacy, acquiring skills, is really important to adapt to the changing nature of work. In other words, if you see on the right side more and more demand from companies at the executive level who want to engage with technologies like artificial intelligence, like IoT, like robotics process automation, like data warehousing, that they are going to need just as much talent supply that will allow them to build these technologies. So those people that can meet that supply side of the equation for the demand of these technologies are the ones that are going to rise the fastest in their careers. Those people that have technical literacy, whether it's Python, whether it's the ability to work with data, work with design, what have you, are those that can adapt to the changing nature of work. The most important thing that you can do is to increase your learning viscosity. It's to increase your palpability to acquire new skills. because the future of work is going to change. This change that's happening right now as we speak is going to continue for many decades. The vast majority of that change is going to happen in the next 10 years. And it's so important, even after you leave from university, that you're constantly learning new skills. And it goes across various different skill sets. So one of the things that I would argue is really important is technical literacy. Python is one example of something that is progressing really, really fast. Again, if you look at the sort of Google trends for data science, you see that these sort of jobs are starting to grow. Jobs in artificial intelligence, jobs in machine learning are starting to grow. That means if there's more and more jobs in those space, then the demand for skills like Python and SQL are going to grow. So when you look at data science and when you look at Python, this is one of the core skills that you guys could be learning right now, because if you are going into various different industries, using SQL, using Python, using different sort of technologies as part of a larger glue to allow yourselves as future leaders of tomorrow to help companies be scientific in terms of business intelligence, in terms of machine learning, in terms of statistics, and basically apply that, as we already talked about, to the benefits of those companies, then you'll be incredibly valuable. So for those of you that aren't familiar with what data science covers, again, this is a topic that requires several hours of its own, but in the future, we see that a lot of very, very highly in demand professions will cover three main areas. This includes data engineers who prepare data pipelines. This includes data scientists that work exclusively with stakeholders to deploy with Python a lot of machine learning algorithms. And then there's data analysts, which visualize and analyze data. The data science knowledge, though, is constantly evolving. And so it's best that you start to think about learning as quickly as you can. So just want to jump back into why we're doing this. We believe that in the future, people are going to need to learn how to learn to learn. We believe that people are going to need to have practical skills to build projects so that they can have a real impact on the companies that they work with. We believe that there's a huge skills gap right now that exists between tomorrow's workforce and the needs of the workforce and what many young people have today. And that can only be solved with areas like project-based learning. So our vision is that young people across the world, not just in Hong Kong, start to learn deep technical skills of the future. We think that young people who have skills in data and artificial intelligence, or in robotics, or in design, and in software engineering is just the first step. Acquiring these skills is fantastic because there's such a huge demand for this now, and of course, consequently in the future. However, learning these skills is simply not enough. If you want to truly excel in the world of tomorrow, you have to acquire these skills and learn to deploy them in projects. And those projects can range from anything. So our vision is that young people like you are learning these skills. Online, offline, doesn't matter, but you have to learn these skills so that you can build projects, you can apply these skills to the future of work. And the beautiful thing is that if we can inspire young people like you to think beyond just getting jobs, to think about purpose, to think about meaning, when so many different fields that you're all going to work in are going to have more and more of their jobs or their work streams being automated, we believe that there's tremendous value in having young people learn skills like the ones that I've already talked about, learn how to build projects, and apply that cognitive lens of solving problems to world problems. Just imagine if there was more and more young people who are going into areas that had huge purpose and value to society. If you truly want to win in your career, learn the skills and apply them to massive projects, massive challenges, and work with really, really talented people just like yourselves who have that passion to want to go solve some of the world's most pressing issues. Whether it's in climate, whether it's in healthcare, whether it's in poverty, the idea is that we're entering a new industrial age where more and more data is going to create more and more resources that can allow us to think about things like carbon capture technology or cancer detection. And it means if you've been spending the last 5, 10, 15 years in a career like cancer detection with radiology, suddenly everything you've learned is automated. Everything you've done is automated. A machine is now able to do your job way better 24/7, and you're unable to catch up. So what that does for us is create new opportunities. It really is a question of mindset. Are you the sort of person that will look at your career, especially if you're already in the workforce, and say, wow, everything I've learned is now irrelevant? Are you the sort of person that will see that as a challenge or as an opportunity? It's our goal, it's my goal, to try and inspire as many young people to see that as an opportunity. Because now man and machine can work together if you have that impetus, if you have that passion and inspiration to want to do something greater than yourselves. You have to go think about how you can learn these skills to solve these problems. The bigger the problem you can solve, the more successful you will be. So jumping back into some of the most popular roles that will come aboard, and I know this is a question that was asked earlier by, I believe, Laura. There is going to be a lot of AI technology that replaces current day-to-day work, which means new roles, and these are just a few, right? The same thing will apply to design. We'll have UI, UX designers. We'll have the same thing apply in product management, new types of AI product managers. This will also apply to new types of roles in robotics, RPA developers, RPA architects. The same thing will apply in cybersecurity, cybersecurity researchers, cybersecurity implementation engineers, cybersecurity analysts. So what I'm trying to show you is just a framework for how it's going to work for AI and maybe in just one industry. But this framework is a mental model of thinking. It's a way of thinking of how other careers and other industries are also going to switch, which is really valuable because the more you can pack your brain with models of thinking to align the reality of the world of future, the more you can predict where demand and supply are going to evolve, which means when there's a demand and supply shortage, there's a really good opportunity to build a career, especially if you're moving from traditional career options. If I was to take, for example, accounting, or take, for example, audit, many of what you do as an accountant or an auditor is going to be automated with the huge advances in information work streams through artificial intelligence. So if that industry is requiring accountant 2.0, you might see that skills in dashboards, skills in exploratory analytics, skills in statistical modeling will be really important. The same thing applies to being a data scientist at a healthcare firm, for example. If traditionally you were studying to become a healthcare professional, you might realize that a lot of what you'll do in the future is to work with data. And so you have to come up with a framework that allows you to think about these new types of roles, which are changing. Again, everything I have here, it's going to change. So do not see this as a threat, see this as an opportunity. Everything is changing, and we have to get young minds like yourself to be ready for the future, be ready for it to change. But when these things are changing, you'll realize similarities. You'll also realize that some things are your strengths, some things are your weakness. Some people are very visual. So a career in business intelligence or business analytics, depending on whether it's health or finance, could be more interesting for you than going into hardcore engineering. My purpose today isn't to tell all of you to go to learn how to use Python. My purpose today is to show you that these technologies are going to create such huge disruptions and such major changes in our lives and our careers that it's so important to be constantly learning on the job. It does not matter if you're graduating from university. It doesn't matter if you're 10 years outside of university or you've done a PhD. Your learning can never stop because these roles are going to come out more and more so. And many of them, think of virtual reality as an example, don't even exist today. And these new industries are going to require people who haven't been trained at the university level, people who've been out of university to go acquire new skill sets, both soft skills and hard skills. So one way to think about it, one mental model of thinking about it is to map out some of the roles that you find very interesting. And from there, you can think about what sort of strengths you have. Where do you find curiosity in the sort of work you have? And then align those roles to your strengths. That is how you can succeed. So one of the things I want to talk about is that there's many different ways to learn. We, for example, are always finding new ways to combine really good instructors and really good platforms online. This is, this has worked for us. We found that many people can reinvent their careers. Doesn't matter if you're young, doesn't matter if you're already in an industry like trading or F&B, right? We've seen a lot of people who have realized that it's so important for them to change their career. And so this is for thousands of students over the last few years, just young people just like you, who have gone from traditional fields and realized that the future of work is no longer the future. The AI world is no longer tomorrow, it's right now. And so learning these skills and thinking about the career you're going to have is really, really important. Again, there's many different ways to learn. I just show you an example of some of the things that we do, where in a situation like a virus, that there is plenty of very difficult situations to come to class. So don't stop. It doesn't matter whether there's a virus or protests or what have you. It doesn't matter what the situation is. You can never stop yourself from learning. And yeah, that's my presentation. So I would be very happy to answer any questions. We have about 15 minutes of Q&A. Feel free to ask on the chat and I'll go through them systematically. Feel free to ask any questions about the technology or what we do or the future of work or anything at all. I'd be very happy and I hope you enjoyed this. Okay, so we have a question from Junshi Wang. Thank you for your question. What's the future relationship between AI and fintech, or how can AI be applied into fintech? Okay, that's a really good question. So in order to think about the future of fintech, why don't we go to this slide here? Okay, great. So, like I said, I want to equip you today with a mental model of thinking about the future of industry. What we see today is that fintech is trying to disrupt what traditional banks do, and traditional banks are simply unable to provide a good enough experience for their customers. So, the future of how AI and fintech are going to be related or how it can be applied to fintech is to think again about the sort of data points that various different professionals within the fintech industry, like data scientists or machine learning engineers, are thinking about. If you can capture that a customer is looking for a mortgage, and if you can through data science, capture data on millions of customers and understand that this customer has a certain credit history and a certain relationship with the bank already, or a certain track record of meeting all their payments, then traditionally a process like mortgage approvals, which requires so many visits to the bank, which requires so much back and forth paperwork and bureaucracy that traditional banks are doing, can be automated with the click of a button, right? There's a lot of fintech companies that want to rethink the entire equation. And so they are hiring people for these roles to be able to scrape together loads of details about data science, about the data of these people. And so when they capture all these details, what they're trying to do is to provide a much better customer experience, right? To kind of wrap up on that question, what I want to take you back to is to think about this. There's always 4 core drivers of value. If we are seeing a fintech can drive cost reductions in the approval process for new loans or new mortgages, and that the people that approve those loans use sophisticated AI algorithms, that would be really, really incredible from a revenue and profit opportunity standpoint. Fintechs then have way more efficiency, way more nimbleness to adapt to their customers. And if you look over here on the bottom right, fintech and AI are just technologies, but what we are seeing is the technology, when used correctly to provide a better user experience, is going to allow for them to overcome the existing strongholds of banks. Thanks again for your question, Jianxi Wang. I hope that answered it. The next question is from Raymond. Is the Julia programming language getting more popular? How do you see its potential? Thank you very much. So Julia is a programming language that is currently a niche programming language. There's a lot of programming languages that are very popular today. To be very honest, I don't know the specifics on how quickly Julia has taken off. And to be very honest, if something is popular like Julia, it will remain popular. And then very soon, the development market will overcome it with a version 2.0. We've seen that across all sorts of programming languages, that over time, in very short periods of time, by the way, that new libraries, new frameworks, and new technologies, new languages altogether quickly eradicate old technologies and old frameworks. So the right way to kind of think about your question is, what do you want to do with something like Julia? How can you add value to a company, to the economy, to society by learning something like Julia? And then maybe look into the data. Are we seeing on Google Trends that Julia is taking off? Or are you seeing that there's other ways for programming languages that are similar to Julia to provide sophisticated user experience? Why I'm still on this slide is the technology is relevant. You got to learn new skills and new tools, but it's how you're going to use that to create value for society in the ways that I've already described on this slide. I hope that answers your question, Raymond. John Tsang, thank you for your question. So if I don't have any background knowledge about coding and data science, and I do want to study coding languages like Python, where can I start from? There's a lot of different resources out there. It really depends on your learning style. We are a company that helps young people learn Python, so you can start with us. We also have many different resources on our own website, on our own live streams, on our own blogs that show you how to get started. So we've got tons of details on how you can go from zero knowledge and absolutely no sort of understanding of how these things work into getting yourself started. The point that we are trying to make is that we need to get you all started. Taking that first step is a little bit difficult, is a little bit daunting sometimes, but it's really not that hard. Many people just like you, and that was why I put that slide in, have gone on and taken that first step. So to answer your question, I would recommend you check out some of the blog pieces at the Accelerate website. That's www.accelerate.co. Again, Python, coding, there's many different resources online, and we are very, very much up to date and up to speed with teaching thousands of people these languages, but there are many different ways of learning it, right? Online, offline. It's really about getting started and finding what sort of learning style works best for you. If you are really serious about it and if you want to learn the specifics, we do have a team that provides career consultations one-on-one to aspiring young talent just like yourself who's entering the workforce. So you can just drop us a line at hello@accelerate.co, and we would be happy to have one of our very dedicated and specialist career counselors help you understand which makes sense. Right, coding is one thing, data science is another, and they both have very different career tracks. So you have to understand what you're learning and how it relates to your longer term career potential. I hope that answers your question. Olivia Lim, should I switch to a tech-related major? That is a very, very famous question. That is one that a lot of university students ask me, actually. I think the answer comes from within. You know, a lot of people in your life will give you a lot of different advice. You should do this, you should do that. Tech is certainly, as I've tried to describe, going to consume every facet of every job, of every part of the economy. Software is eating the world, so you may not have to become a hardcore software engineer, which is why I showed that other slide. Having basic tech literacy already puts you ahead of your peers in the top 1% if you're really good at it. So the question I would rephrase is, how much tech-related literacy do you feel at this stage of your career, and it will change, do you need to acquire? And that depends on the sort of roles you're looking into. If you look back at something like this, different processes and different industries have different types of roles. Again, this is just one framework of looking at it. But you may see that you don't need to be in a tech-related major if you want to go into something like business intelligence. You might have to be really good with visual skills and really good at storytelling and really good at building your soft skills and convincing management on business recommendations. So it really does depend on where your curiosity lies and where your strengths lie. If you believe, Olivia, that you could do really well for yourself by learning data science and go into the more hardcore technical skills, then you will find a whole breadth of opportunities that will open up for you and your career. So I would recommend that you kind of speak to one of our career counselors about that. We'd be happy to talk to you about your current major and also evaluate what sort of roles are open for you. Or you can also do more research on things like the difference between a business intelligence analyst versus a data scientist and try and understand where your strengths are. You as young people need to find where you can put your strengths in the future. Because if you are someone that isn't very keen to learn Python or struggle to go into the basics of data engineering, why would you do that? Right? This is not a message that everyone needs to do this. This is a message that everyone needs to be aware of these skills and how companies are seeing these skills, and that at least to some degree, everyone does need to learn these skills, but they're very different skills. Learning Tableau, learning how to build dashboards and connecting that to business intelligence is super valuable in certain industries like retail or e-commerce. And there's no need at that point to learn Python. So you have to map out your career goals. You have to map out what's important to you, and you have to map out your curiosity and strengths. And I understand, even when I was graduating from college, that this is quite hard. So one recommendation is to see it as a never-ending iteration process. You're looking for a feedback loop almost that allows you to constantly ask and understand from various people, right? Too often I see students in Hong Kong, they're not going out there. They're not talking to people who are already in these roles in fintech, for example, and they're not acquiring that knowledge. So getting that feedback loop going at an early age will set you all up for success. I promise you. Next question is from C. Pentong. So except Kaggle, how can we apply and polish our data analyzing skills? Which kind of skills do a tech company cherish? So tech companies have various different types of skill sets. we find that Python has become the most popular skill to acquire if you're going into a lot of technical fields. Again, it does depend on what sort of role you're looking into. You might go to a tech company and realize that learning Java would be really important. You might go to a tech company and realize becoming a software engineer and learning front-end skills like HTML, CSS is really important. But if you're thinking specifically about data analyzing skills, there's a lot of resources out there. Again, Accelerate provides a lot of resources through our own blogs, which are completely free, that show you where you can get started outside of Kaggle. That can show you what ways you can think about data analyzing skills, and to think about mapping that data analyzing skills as just one of the tools that you need to have as part of a broader set of skills, right? So when you think of processes like a data analyst, if I go back to the business intelligence and business analytics, Kaggle provides you open source data to practice the full end-to-end data lifecycle. Doing that with other projects, again, we can refer you to the right places. Just shoot us a note after this or reach out to our careers team. We'd be happy to show you how to acquire those data sets and allow you to acquire the skills. What we realize in our experience of helping thousands of students acquire these skills and hundreds of students acquire jobs at tech companies is that the tools are just one component. What these companies are looking for is what you can do with those tools for their company to create value, to extract value from artificial intelligence. I hope that answers your question. Next question. We have a question from Yan Jie Guo. What's the future in healthcare? What can I do as a physiotherapist? So healthcare is a pretty exciting field. Actually, at Accelerate, we've worked with a lot of different industries in healthcare, different companies in healthcare, like the Hong Kong Hospital Authority. And we know even at the government level, healthcare is ripe for major disruption. So when you see healthcare, you could think about some of the top companies in healthcare that are automating certain processes of genomics research, of biomedical engineering, of bringing new drugs and new solutions to markets, or even in Hong Kong, Prenetics, for example. That's a really famous company that has the Circle DNA tool with Watson's. I'm sure some of you have heard of it. So when you're trying to understand the future of an industry, it's always really good to try and, just like a data analyst, to try and scrape different sources of how this industry is changing. So you want to look at processes that leading startups and leading data scientists are going into and how they're applying those processes to make the customer experience better. In the case of healthcare, how they're going to make the experience for patients even better. This means that if you are to go in the field of physiotherapy, you might find that there will be less and less work around you on scheduling or on finding frameworks that allow you to apply those physiotherapy tools. You might find that certain patients will use certain startups to take pictures of pain points in their body, and that will change the way that you interact with them. To be honest, I'm not too familiar with physiotherapy as a career field, but I do know that healthcare is ripe for major disruption. And like I mentioned before, thinking about how certain startups are using technologies to disrupt it, or government entities that are trying to use things like convolutional neural networks so that they can analyze cancer earlier or kind of pre-diagnose different diseases or use your data to have preventive measures. That is really interesting. Next question, Ya Wen Zhang. Are there any chances for non-tech background students? Seems they do not have edges compared to tech background students. I don't want you to think like that at all. Again, there is a major transition happening, and that does not mean if you're a non-tech student that you can't acquire skills. It's all about the mindset, right? And I've seen this. I'm not telling you this for fun. I've seen thousands of people who were accountants, who were housewives, who were drivers, who were what have you, sales, marketing, right? Now, everyone has their own level of literacy that they need to acquire. Some need to acquire, like I said, hardcore skills in machine learning and data science, and maybe that's not you, right? Don't feel intimidated if that's not you. That's not your strength. But maybe skills in Tableau, which are better than Excel, allow you to do your job better and then allow your company to add more value to your customers. So I wouldn't feel too stressed out about whether or not you're a non-tech background or a tech background. I think you have to be more about learning new things, especially those that find your curiosity being captured, and then see how that can be spun as a story to these companies and explain to them that you can use these skills to tell a story with data, right? And the same thing goes with other technologies. If you're a creative person, right, maybe this whole field of AI, you can still be a part of it. You can still get jobs at all these companies, but you should learn things like user experience design or user interface design, right? Interaction design. Human computer interaction design is a brand new field. I think there's one university in the world that has a program like that, and that is going to explode the way that us as humanity think about interacting day to day with machines. There's a whole new field there, and that is way more of a design, a research, and empathy process rather than one that has hardcore skill set requirements. I hope that answers your question. Do not stress out if you're a non-tech background. Find your strengths. If it's something creative, you can still be part of the AI industry. Next question, Gabriel Poon. How can AI be applied to redefine the global beauty and cosmetics industry? Wow, great question. So let's go back to our framework over here, right? Data is the most valuable asset for any organization. I would argue that in the global beauty and cosmetics industry, there's a whole life cycle of companies that need to move from not looking at the data from who's buying their products, how often they're buying their products, inventory management, optimizations at the storefront. Can you price something a little bit better? Can you change the pricing and see that you sell more product? Can you realize early on that you're going to be running out of a hot selling product like these things are predictive algorithms, or these things are insights, basically, right? You don't have to get too technical here, but to answer your question, the global beauty and cosmetics industry is also, like I mentioned, going through a major transition, and it happens throughout their entire value chain, right? It might happen in the way in the manufacturing, they're smarter in the way they procure materials. Again, that saves cost. That's how AI creates value. It might be in the way that they're producing lipsticks, for example. And so they realize from the projections they have that next year there's going to be 10x increase in lipstick production, right, or demand. And so you have to optimize the factory to do that. Otherwise, you're producing products that end up going to waste, right? Companies have a real cost if something is sticking in inventory. Maybe global beauty and cosmetics will follow what we've seen, right? We've done work with some really, really cool retailers, and those that are in global beauty and cosmetics who are thinking about promoting themselves better. Again, look at this. This is like the 4 Ps of how value creation happens. You can apply this to any industry, whether it's, whether it's global beauty and cosmetics or even automotive. But in this example, they will find omni-channel strategies so that they can target a customer who buys mostly online to say, here, come to a offline pop-up store. Or if they're mostly buying online, let's say it's Makeup 1 and Makeup 2, then just like Amazon, they give you book recommendations. You can promote yourself better. And in the end, it's all about how do we provide more value to the people that we serve. Doesn't matter if you're serving governments, doesn't matter if you're serving enterprises, doesn't matter if you're serving individuals. It's all about how do we create value. The technology itself doesn't really do anything. Z Pantong, may I further ask that, except the research field, what is the advantage of a math student in the field of data science? Yeah, math students do great, actually. So I see that a lot of math students love to go into the theoreticals behind machine learning engineering, as well as creating statistical models. So machine learning requires, especially if you're going down the machine learning engineering route, which is a very, very hot job, T Pantong, There's a lot of careers opening up in that space. Figuring out how to build algorithms, how to build data models, and how to iterate them is something that your math skills will help you a lot, right? And that might mean that you could still go beyond research field. There's a lot of companies that need math, physics, and engineering students who understand systems level thinking, as well as understand the statistical underpinning of how these equations can help industries transform. That is really important. Being a math student is great for you to think about more of the fields that are slightly more technical in a chart like this. I hope that answers your question. Oscar T. What is the difference between data analyst, engineer, and scientist? What skill set plays most important amongst the three roles? How AI can help the process of these three roles? So, to answer your question, I'll refer back to this slide. They are very, very different. You know, a data analyst will have skills in data cleaning, in less Python, to be honest, and more domain knowledge. A data analyst, for example, at a cosmetics firm is looking at data in inventory or sales. They're looking at the business data and they're trying to visualize it. So data analysts do a lot of data visualization, right? They spend less time doing hardcore algorithm creation and more time with things like Tableau or Power BI or Seaborn. So that is very much more the visual and analytical to the business. The data engineering, they spend a little bit less time on the business side. These are the people that kind of scrape data, right? If you think of data as oil, the data engineers are out there trying to scrape the oil, trying to find areas where the oil is ready to be rigged. It's not the best example for Friday, but it will do. So the idea is they are going to create very easy machinery so that that oil can be analyzed, right? Because the data itself, if it's in its raw format, right? If you look at oil, if it's still under the ground, if it's not gone through that process, that oil is not useful to us as gas. So what's the point of that if we haven't created machinery, or in this case, data warehouses and data lakes that allow us to actually use it? And then the data scientists are the front line of using that. They have domain knowledge. They work very closely with the data analyst. They work very closely with the data engineer, but they have to build these models that are sometimes very sophisticated in things like deep learning to basically bring to life that data in a format. When you think about Amazon, the data scientists were the ones that built the actual recommendation engines. The data analysts were the ones that were able to see whether or not it helps the sales. The data engineers were the ones that were capturing all the data about books and all the data entry points in the first place for the data scientists to do that. And I predict that we'll see even more different types of niche areas, right? There will be data product managers, right? So there will be a lot of different types of niche roles. There are machine learning engineers that focus specifically on the machine learning side. So to answer your question, there's a lot of interplaying skill sets, but there's also a lot of focal skill sets. There's also differences in which which roles rely most with different business stakeholders. So that's something for you to think about. Oscar, further ask for my question, how AI can help on competitor analytics in the e-commerce area. How AI can bring value to business on marketing and global perspective. So if I go back to this over here, just like we did with the global cosmetics industry, as well as the manufacturing industry earlier in our broadcast, the AI technology can allow you in understanding what sort of products are being bought and sold a lot by your competitors. Again, this really becomes a question of how you get access to that, whether it's market intelligence or research reports, or you can literally see publicly that certain products have prices, right? I know many companies who are tracking, like Amazon, the price of all their products, every book, to what might be sold on Walmart.com. Again, that's just an example, but pricing allows you to find new ways to dynamically assess whether or not you should increase, decrease, and you can have models. The same thing applies in the airline industry. The same thing applies sooner or later to the hotel industry, where you can course correct. By course correcting, you realize if you can get more revenue. By course correcting, you can realize, oh, it's Christmas time, so now is the time to increase the prices. But you also want to remain competitive. The same thing applies to e-commerce on products. Amazon is a great example. How AI can bring value to business on marketing in global perspectives, I think it's really about being personalized. Marketing is about speaking a message to someone, right? The same way that we're all having a conversation right now. Really effective marketing, when it's AI driven, will allow the company to elicit its brand and its value in a way that's very personalized. So that means you get emails for certain products that you like. Imagine if you're a customer on Amazon and you like reading a lot of biographies, but then they send you an email to say, please come buy a fiction book, a storybook, right? That does not allow much value to be created on an e-commerce standpoint. But if you think about global marketing and sales, if you can focus on the customer, their past choices, that really works, right? I'll give you one final example before we have to wrap up. Spotify, for example, they are tracking every single click of yours. They're tracking how you listen to music. I think the same applies to Apple Music as well. So you, when you're being asked to convert from Spotify free to Spotify premium, will have a sort of personalized message. Here is your favorite songs, and now you can only listen to a few on random. So why don't you, in order to listen to that next one that we know that you like, just like a marketing, will speak to your soul, will speak to what you like, will personalize for you. And the same thing applies in education, right? Great ed tech companies are personalizing for them. And the way they do that in terms of marketing is to target their efforts using AI. I think we have time for one last question. If not, I would just like to wrap up with this slide. My final comment to you all is there's a lot of change that's going to happen. There's a lot of industries that are completely going through major overhaul. Our careers tomorrow are not going to be just a job. For those that want more than just the financial success of careers, finding purpose and meaning, because a lot of careers are going to have a lot of automation, finding purpose and meaning in your work to do things with skills that can allow humanity to move forward, to expand the stream of human consciousness. That is a very important thing for all of you to think about. It's been my pleasure. I really would love to see some of you learning more and more skills. If any of you would like to talk to me personally, I will leave my email address. You'll feel free to reach out to our company. We have people who can help you with your career planning. I'll be in touch with Jessica from your careers office as well. And we hope that we can work closely with the CUHK careers team to provide more value to you by actually giving you workshops on Python, on AI, giving you guest speakers. Feel free to email us. We're very excited to work with Hong Kong. Our goal right now is, given the situation in Hong Kong, to try and help Hong Kong be reinvented. And we want the young people just like you to learn these skills and to work with us to reinvent Hong Kong so that we can all have a better Hong Kong and have a better future. We have one final question. I will reply to you offline. We are almost done with time, but really quickly, besides learning the theorems of statistics and programming algorithms, what skills? Yeah, I'll reply to you offline. Thank you again, and it's been a pleasure. Feel free to reach out to all of us. And I'm going to end the stream right now. Thank you again. I hope you have a wonderful weekend.